Odhiambo is too harsh with the young legislator.
Yeah, I also think so.
Sometimes the people who make us think outside the box are the ones who really stretch our imagination.
Okay.
And Cherargei is one of those people who really tries to stretch our imagination. Because sometimes the conversations that we have on the street and in the corridors, he has the guts to bring them to the fore of the conversation. He is the one who brought in and said, why can't we think about the extension of the term limit? And now he's saying, why can't we think about the retirement benefits? We have said it ourselves here that the law actually contradicts itself on this.
Okay.
The problem I have with the gentleman, and I think it's the reason why Odhiambo is so mad with him, is his timing. Because you will be always, remember, nation building is also an art of perception building. Because when your timing is wrong, then you question your intention. Whereas we agree that there is a problem with the law and this aspect of what we should do to our heads of state, you can't, when you wait until the time when the former president has just spoken, and that is the time you are now presenting this to parliament, it comes in bad taste.
Okay.
Okay? It is the same thing that he was doing with the term, the issues of the extension of the term. Timing in itself. When you want to have such conversations, you must be able to analyze and ask yourself, at what point does it come in good taste? So that we do not ensure that we are framing our laws for individuals. That is one of the biggest problems that we have had as a country again. Most of the time we create our laws on the basis of the circumstance that is existing at that particular time without being keen on what posterity will offer and with only the individuals in mind. And that's why today when you talk about extension of the term limit, all of us will have President Ruto in mind instead of having the president in mind.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's why today, when we talk about the Retirement Benefits Act, all of us will be having President Uhuru Kenyatta in mind and not the former president in mind. Because at the end of the day, sometimes we have to understand that law is not created for particular individuals. But the moment we always go that direction of individuals, that's why when the individuals exit the space, the law becomes irrelevant. That's why we are saying that we created a law that was supposed to take care of an old president.
Yeah.
Now, when we now have presidents that are younger, it now starts to be complicated. So we must not create our laws on the basis of the individuals, and we must not interpret things on the basis of the people who are in office at that particular time. So what should we be able to do then? We should have honest and decent conversations around what should we do with our former heads of state, not what should we do with President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Okay.
What should we do about the terms of our president, not what should we do with the term of President William Ruto. The moment you bring the names of the individuals into the picture, it blurs us from objective thinking. And therefore, we then create the law based on our love or lack of it, of that particular person who is in office. And I like the example that Odhiambo gives of the which year was this, when we were, the 2010 Constitution in Naivasha. When the proposal was that we'll be having a strong position of the official opposition leader, the framers of that law, the people, in fact, most of the time, Jagero, when you hear the people on TV who keep saying when we were in Naivasha, 90% of them were actually ODM people. 90% of them, they were actually ODM people. But the framing of the law at that time was pegged on their imagination that it was so obvious that Raila was going to become president. And so every advantage was given to the president and every disadvantage to the opposition leader. Because according to them, the opposition leader was never going to be Raila. The president was going to be Raila. And so there was little care.
So they took everything away from the opposition's office.
Exactly. That's why they created, the official opposition leader then changed to become the minority leader. Okay? That is how the bigger people, even when we call Raila opposition leader, we call this Kinarigiji opposition. The truth is that they are not. Because our law does not recognize them anywhere. But this was butchered at the level of 2010. Why? Because at that time, we were thinking opposition using a name. And we were thinking government and president using a name. So it blurred some people from objective thought process. That's what I'm saying today, when we want to talk about how should we as a country treat our former leaders, we must be able to be willing to remove the names from the conversation. The moment we introduce the names into the conversation, we go back to tribal arithmetic. And I can be able to assure you, Jagero, that if this motion goes into parliament, that if it even, of course I don't see it going far, but in the weird imagination, that it even gets to plenary, the voting process in that parliament will be along tribal lines. So again, it will not be objective. it will be we are defending our son.
Yeah.
And we are defending our boss. Now, that becomes, and one of the tragedy problems I have with the Cherargei is that sometimes he puts President Ruto at a very bad place. Because you cannot block people from imagining that some of these things would be coming from them, him being UDA. So there would be the imagination that this is UDA fronting, there would be the it puts
that is very interesting that you say that. That is very interesting that you say that, because if you look at Sudi's post today, what does it say?
I haven't checked.
It says that Cherargei and the Standard are the same people.
That's interesting.
Yes,
That's
he has castigated him badly.
That's what I'm telling you, Cherargei.
That's very interesting.
You know, he has several things, Jagero. And we have always told you here with Odhiambo from a communication standpoint that perception is very key, especially in governance.
He has said, verbatim, Cherargei and the Standard are one and the same. Don't drag us into this nonsense.
He would be pulled to say that, because look at it.
This is actually nonsense. I agree.
Yeah, look at it.
If Sudi is a sober voice.
Is from Rift Valley.
Where? Okay.
He's UDA. He's a UDA senator. The moment he puts up such statements, you cannot dissuade the country not to imagine that this is coming from somewhere else. And that becomes wrong perception for the president and for the ruling party and for the government itself.
And that's why I said, Mundana, that if you remember, Cherargei is the worst example of what a parliamentarian should be. It keeps on kowtowing and confusing perception. So he's not a very reliable image builder. Because at one time, he was working with Gachagua. And then refused to support him final moment. Then now, of course, he's behaving like the Standard, and the Sudi is right to say that. And this is not a priority for the state or the regime. Going after Uhuru, I don't think it's a priority for Ruto. Genuinely, I don't think so.
It has no value addition at all. The only thing it does is that it adds into confusion.
Yes.
Because now we are seated at political headache. We are now going to spend a whole hour discussing a matter that was not supposed to be a matter of national interest at all.
Right.
We would be able to be discussing other development projects and the politics of the country. But now we are now here busy discussing a matter that was not supposed to be an issue at all.
If you look at the 5 qualities